The S.R. Manuscript, Volume 2. The accumulation of 3 years of research and writings on the topic of semen retention. If you wish to physically own the works of the ancient archives, then this book is for you. Your choice of self-indulgence or self-restraint is reflected in the way you move your body. A man with his gonads intact, producing testosterone, moves very differently to men depleted in these substances. You are already deeply aware of this on some level. Consider the stallion versus the castrated horse, the gelding. How quickly does the image of the stallion appear in your mind? Its beauty, its grace, its power. The very word stallion evokes a far stronger emotional response than gelding, and this distinction is rooted solely in the genital secretions, which constitutes the only real difference between the two animals. This is the beauty of the intact male, and signs like this are everywhere in nature. The stallion is the male horse with his genitals intact, whereas the gelding is the male horse that has been castrated. The stallion has a lot more presence and power than a gelding. It also puts on muscle more easily. The stallion is known as the majestic creature, a thing of beauty. Think how many stories and movies are about the stallion, or even contain the word stallion in the title. But the gelding is rarely romanticized. How many movies are there with the word gelding in the title? I don't know of a single one. The stallion draws that much more attention because the stallion is stronger, more charismatic, faster, and is more full of all the good traits we identify with beauty. In the horse world, they say, ask a stallion, tell a gelding, negotiate with a mare. The stallion dominates, the gelding obeys. The contrast between a stallion and a gelding says it all. The difference lies in whether the male remains intact or has been depleted of his seminal essence. Sure, a gelding is far more depleted than a man who merely releases, but a man who does so constantly may also find himself in a similar state of depletion. Choosing to keep your seed intact is choosing to become a stallion in a world full of geldings. A stallion is more aggressive, just like the retaining man, more charismatic, more responsive, stronger-willed, and more graceful in movement. Written in the 1800s. It is safe to say that sexual perversion in its various forms touches more than half the population of every city, town, and country in our modern civilization. It shortens human life, burdens it with infirmities and diseases, depletes its working power, enfeebles its mentality, and makes it a drudgery and a sorrow. Look at the men whom you meet day after day, and how few specimens of perfect manhood do you see. Note their walk and bearing, how shilly-shally the gait, how lustreless the eye, how utterly devoid of snap and spirit the whole demeanor. Contrast men with the males of the brute creation, the lion, the tiger, the bull, or the entire horse. What a majesty there is in the movements of these creatures, what fire in the eye, what thunder in the voice. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? Canst thou make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paweth in the valley and rejoiceth in his strength. He goeth out to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear, and is not affrighted. Neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage. Neither believeth he that is the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpets, Ha ha, and he smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. That is Job's description of the war horse, and it is the climax of sublimity. And shall not man, standing at the head of creation, excel in beauty and in bearing all lower animals? The eunuchs of the East were castrated and appointed to the care of bedchambers in palaces and in the homes of the wealthy. They were effeminate and harmless creatures with smooth faces and without force and energy of character. For when sexual power is destroyed or depleted, there is always a lack of force and energy. Your sexuality is reflected in your physiology. The manly man walks with the manly walk, his chest out and his head high. The effeminate man walks with a feminine walk, a slouched stance, often appearing submissive and delicate in movement and posture. The depletion of your seminal secretions will affect the way you move your body, the way you stand. Your presence of sexuality or lack thereof is expressed in your bodily movements and motions. You think your secrets of solitary vice are well kept, but your physiology reveals them for all those around you to see. Be aware of this. You cannot conceal the vice from those with eyes and ears. The spinal marrow, that is, the spongy tissue in the bone and in between the vertebrae, plays a central role in maintaining posture in the spine. Although the connection is not recognized in any modern medical works to my knowledge, the old works on this topic often drew the connection between semen loss and depletion of this spinal marrow. In fact, the father of medicine, Hippocrates, in which the Hippocratic Oath is named after, wrote that semen loss caused spinal consumption, known as tabes dorsalis, a condition in which the deterioration of the spinal marrow led to wasting, emaciation, and physical debility. He writes, "This disorder arises from the spinal marrow, and those who are given to unnatural enjoyments are afflicted with it. They have no fever, and though they eat well, they fall away and become consumptive. They feel as if a sting or stitch descended from the head along the spinal marrow." The spine serves as the root of the human body. That its depletion leads to fragile movement and bad posture is evidenced from observing the elderly. Among the elderly, loss of movement and deterioration of posture is often seen as a natural occurrence of aging. Constant depletion of this vital substance is accelerating the process of aging, and that is perhaps why the deterioration of posture and flexible movement occurs. The 1800s physician Deslandes wrote, "The loss of strength generally follows the loss of flesh and returns also with it. At first, debility only follows the act temporarily, but afterward it continues longer. New emissions of semen take place, and even before the subject of them has regained the strength exhausted by previous indulgence. In the morning he rises from his bed with difficulty. During the day he is idle, stupid, and indolent, and pursues his avocations without any spirit. If he goes upstairs or ascends a hill, his heart beats forcibly, and he pants very much. This debility, if the cause which produces it does not cease to act, may increase to a frightful degree. We have seen onanists whose bodies were bent down by the weight of the head and chest and curved as in old men. These individuals could not stand erect, their lower extremities could not support their weight, and at the least motion they felt giddy and faint, and finally terminated the remnant of their existence on a sofa or bed which they could not leave. Many authors, Sanctorius and Tissot, among others, have asserted that this debility is greater or less according to the position of the body during the act of venery, but we attach but slight importance to this circumstance, although they may have some effect. We think more of Sainte Marie's opinion, that the lower part of the body is frequently weaker than the upper, because the spinal marrow is affected by seminal emissions. As the flesh returns when the onanist ceases from his bad habits, so too does his strength, and generally rapidly. But there are many who are affected during their whole lives with great debility, which unfits them for many occupations. It is very common to find individuals who complain of being incapable of any physical effort, and who request their physician to give them strength. On questioning them, almost all admit that in their youth they have been addicted to onanism. Furthermore, the absence of the seminal secretion has been linked to bone loss. It has been well documented that eunuchs, due to lifelong hormonal deficiency, often suffered from bone degeneration and osteoporosis. Old texts described the eunuch's bones as porous and brittle. As Shepard explains, This is also why colts were not castrated early on. Owners usually waited a few years as to allow the bones and muscles to develop strength. This was in opposition to cattle that were usually castrated soon after birth. As cows were consumed, a fatty, more tender meat was preferred. Thus, the castrated animals produced this more tender meat, whereas the intact male's meat was tougher due to less fat and increased muscle. Fowler writes how extra fat accompanies sexual inertia of some kind. This fact is patent to all, that oxen always fatten easier than bulls, geldings than stallions, wethers than rams, old men and women than those in their prime. And so of all the emasculated of the domestic animals and compared with the unmasculated, obviously because sexual vigor throws so much action into all their functions as to consume all surplus material, while sexual dormancy leaves all the other functions too tame to work up this organic material, which compels nature to stow it away in fat. Right hard workers are rarely fat, a lean horse for a long pull. Shakespeare was true to nature in representing fat men as easy, good-natured and jolly, but lean as ambitious and surging with powerful passions, their sexual vigor throwing such tremendous energy into all their functions as to keep their fat down. Of course, this is not to say the overweight man is in any way lacking in amorous feeling. Fowler writes, fat men and women are often extra-amatory, yet more excitement is one thing and procreative power is quite another, and often in an inverse ration to each other. The bones, the flesh, the movements, the posture, all such aspects of our physiology are modulated by one's sexuality and ability to produce a seminal secretion. One's very disposition is greatly enhanced or subdued by these secretions. Castrated horses or geldings are often observed to have duller senses and less reactive behavior compared to stallions, largely due to the absence of seminal secretions, which play a key role in heightening alertness, drive, and sensory responsiveness. A man retaining his semen will also retain such traits as the stallion, increased vigilance and aggression. He may be more likely to stand up to and call out others that pose a threat to him, stronger response to olfactory stimuli such as female scents and pheromones. There is evidence in stallions of increased spatial memory, which I predict may also apply to men with their secretions and gonads intact, implying greater visual memory and enhanced learning and mental functioning. I think this also explains why many on semen retention have reported easier articulation of their words and fluid of communication when retaining as opposed to when releasing. All of the positive traits arising from avoidance of sexual excess make us more attractive to others for the sole reason that people carry a natural repulsion towards deterioration, as it implies death. People also feel a visceral attraction to all things fresh and beautiful, as they imply life. All of the enhanced traits of the stallion, of an intact manhood, are signs of an abundant life energy within them, a life force. Some say this energy is God itself. Whatever it is what we all respect, adore, and aspire to. We must all strive to retain it.